Jake Morrison pulled his worn leather jacket tighter as the cold November wind cut through the small town of Cedar Creek. At 35, he had spent most of his adult life working on ranches across Wyoming and Montana. His weathered hands and sun-beaten face told stories of long days under harsh skies, but his gentle blue eyes revealed a kindness that many people missed at first glance. He had come to Cedar Creek 3 days ago, looking for work at the Henderson Ranch just outside town. The job interview had gone well, and he was supposed to start Monday morning. Tonight, he planned to grab a hot meal at Molly's Diner before heading back to the small motel room he had rented for the week. The main street was quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Most shops had already closed for the evening, their windows glowing softly in the dim streetlights. Jake walked slowly, his boots clicking against the concrete sidewalk. He enjoyed these peaceful moments, especially after years of constant noise and activity on busy ranches. As he approached the diner, something caught his attention. Near the alley beside Murphy's hardware store, he noticed a small figure huddled against the brick wall. At first, he thought it might be a stray dog or cat seeking shelter from the cold. But as he got closer, his heart sank when he realized it was a child. The little girl couldn't have been more than 7 or 8 years old. She was sitting on a piece of cardboard, her thin arms wrapped around her knees. Her clothes were dirty and too big for her small frame. An oversized sweater hung loosely on her shoulders, and her jeans were rolled up at the bottom. Her dark hair was tangled and looked like it hadn't been washed in days. Jake stopped walking and looked around the empty street. Where were her parents? Why was she alone in this cold weather? The temperature was dropping fast, and he could see his breath in the air. This little girl must be freezing. He approached slowly, not wanting to frighten her. When he was about 10 feet away, she looked up at him with large, scared brown eyes. Her face was pale, and he could see that she was shivering despite trying to stay brave. "Hey there," Jake said softly, crouching down to her level. "Are you okay?" The little girl stared at him for a moment without speaking. Her eyes darted nervously between his face and the empty street behind him. She clutched a small, stuffed rabbit that was missing one ear and had seen better days. "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind. Jake nodded, understanding her caution. "That's very smart of you. Your parents taught you well." He paused, studying her frightened expression. "Where are your mom and dad?" Fresh tears started rolling down her dirty cheeks. "I don't know," she admitted, her lower lip trembling. "I've been waiting for them, but they haven't come back." Jake felt his chest tighten with concern. This poor child was clearly in trouble, and he couldn't just walk away and pretend he hadn't seen her. But he also knew he had to be careful. Approaching a lost child as a stranger could be misunderstood, especially in a small town where everyone knew everyone except for him. "How long have you been waiting here?" he asked gently. She thought for a moment, her small face scrunched up in concentration. "Since the sun was high," she said, pointing upward. "It was warm then, but now it's getting really cold." Jake realized she had been sitting here all day. The sun had set over an hour ago, and the temperature was continuing to drop. If she stayed out here much longer, she could get seriously sick or worse. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked. "Emma," she replied quietly. "Emma Rose Collins." "That's a beautiful name." "I am Jake." He smiled warmly, hoping to put her at ease. "Emma, it's getting really cold out here. Do you have anywhere warm you can go?" She shook her head sadly. "Mama said to wait right here and not move. She said she'd be right back." Her voice broke a little as she continued, "But that was before lunchtime, and I'm really hungry and cold." Jake's heart broke for this little girl. Something was clearly very wrong. A responsible parent wouldn't leave a child alone on the street for hours, especially not in weather like this. He wondered if there had been an accident or some kind of emergency. "Emma, I think we should call someone to help find her mama," he said carefully. "The police officers in town are really nice, and they're good at helping people." Emma's eyes grew wide with fear. "No, Mama said never talk to police. She said they take kids away from their families." She clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter. I have to wait here. She's coming back. She promised. Jake could see the terror in her eyes at the mention of police. He wondered what kind of situation this child came from that made her so afraid of getting help. But right now, the most important thing was getting her somewhere warm and safe. The wind picked up again, and Emma's teeth started chattering audibly. Her lips were beginning to look blue in the dim streetlight. Jake made a quick decision. Emma, you're going to get really sick if you stay out here in the cold, he said, taking off his heavy jacket. Here, put this on. He held out the jacket toward her, but she just stared at it without moving. The jacket was clearly much too big for her, but it would help keep her warm. It's okay, Jake said softly. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go. But, please, let me help keep you warm. Emma hesitated for a long moment, looking between Jake's kind face and the warm jacket in his hands. Finally, the cold won out over her fear. She reached out and took the jacket, immediately pulling it around her small body like a blanket. The jacket was so large on her that it covered her completely from shoulders to feet. Only her small face peeked out from the collar. Despite her situation, Jake couldn't help but smile a little at how tiny she looked wrapped up in his coat. Thank you, Emma whispered, and for the first time since he'd found her, she stopped shivering quite so violently. Jake sat down on the concrete next to her, keeping a respectful distance, but close enough to talk quietly. Emma, can you tell me anything about where your mama went? Maybe I can help figure out when she might come back. Emma was quiet for several minutes, thinking carefully. She said she had to go talk to someone about getting us a new place to live. She said it was very important, and she had to go alone. She looked up at Jake with hopeful eyes. She said after she talks to the man, we might have a real house again instead of sleeping in the car. Jake's understanding of the situation began to clear. Emma and her mother were apparently homeless, living in their car. The mother had gone to some kind of meeting, probably about housing assistance or a job, and had left Emma waiting. But something had gone wrong, and she hadn't returned. Have you and your mama been staying in your car for a while? He asked gently. Emma nodded. Since we had to leave our old house. Mama said the mean man who owned it wanted too much money, so we had to go. She said it was just for a little while until she could find work. Her voice got smaller, but it's been a long little while. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, not at Emma or her mother, but at the circumstances that had put this child in such a vulnerable position. No child should have to live in a car or be left alone on a cold street. Where's your car now? He asked. It's parked behind the big store with all the food, Emma said, pointing down the street toward the grocery store. But Mama took the keys with her. I can't get in to get my other sweater. Jake realized that even if he could locate their car, Emma couldn't access it for shelter. She was truly stuck out here in the cold with nowhere to go. A new gust of wind swept down the street, and even with Jake's jacket, Emma curled up smaller and started shivering again. Her small body was losing heat faster than the jacket could keep her warm. Emma, Jake said carefully, I know your mama told you to stay here, but you're getting too cold. What if we went somewhere warm nearby, just until your mama comes back? Somewhere we can watch for her from the window. Emma looked uncertain. Mama said not to move from this spot. I understand, and your mama was trying to keep you safe. But she also wouldn't want you to get sick from the cold, would she? Emma thought about this seriously. No, she admitted. Mama always worries about me getting sick. She says we can't afford for me to go to the doctor. Jake's heart ached again at this revelation. Not only were they homeless, but they couldn't afford medical care either. This mother was probably desperate, trying to find help for her and her daughter. There's a warm diner just down the street, Jake said, pointing toward Molly's diner. We could sit by the window and watch for your mama. You could get something warm to eat and drink. When we see her coming, you can run right back out here. Emma's stomach chose that moment to growl loudly, causing her to blush with embarrassment. I am really hungry, she admitted quietly. Jake could see her internal struggle. She wanted to obey her mother's instructions, but she was cold, hungry, and scared. He decided to give her a little more time to think about it. You don't have to decide right now, he said. But, Emma, can I ask you something? She nodded. If your mama saw you right now, sitting here in the cold, hungry and shivering, what do you think she would want you to do? Emma considered this question seriously, her young face thoughtful. She would want me to be safe and warm, she said slowly. She always says being safe is the most important thing. That's right. And sometimes being safe means we have to make good choices even when we're scared. Emma looked toward the warm glow of the diner, then back at the spot where her mother had left her. Jake could see her wrestling with the decision. Finally, she looked up at him with those big brown eyes and said the words that would stay with Jake for the rest of his life. Sir, may I hide in your coat? The little girl murmured. Jake was speechless for a moment. The way she phrased it, asking to hide in his coat rather than asking him to take her somewhere, showed how frightened and vulnerable she felt. She wasn't asking him to take her away from where her mother would look for her. She was asking for protection, for shelter, for someone to keep her safe while she waited. Of course, Emma, Jake said softly, his voice thick with emotion. You can stay as close to me as you need to feel safe. Emma scooted closer to him, pulling his large jacket around both of them as much as possible. Jake was careful to let her control how close she came, never reaching for her or making her feel trapped. Are we still going to watch for Mama from the warm place? She asked hopefully. Absolutely. We'll sit right by the big window so we can see everything that happens on this street. The moment we see your mama, you can run out to meet her. Emma nodded, seeming relieved to have made the decision. Will you help me find her if she doesn't come back soon? Jake looked down at this brave little girl who had been abandoned in circumstances beyond her control, and he made a silent promise to himself. He would do whatever it took to help her. Yes, Emma, I'll help you find your mama. I promise. Jake stood up slowly and offered his hand to Emma. She looked at it for a moment, then carefully placed her small, cold fingers in his palm. Her hand was so tiny that his completely covered it. Together, they walked the short distance to Molly's diner, Emma still wrapped in Jake's oversized jacket. The warmth hit them immediately as Jake pushed open the glass door. The diner was mostly empty except for an elderly man reading a newspaper in a corner booth and a young couple sharing a piece of pie. The smell of coffee, bacon, and fresh bread filled the air, making Emma's stomach growl again even louder than before. Molly herself, a woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, looked up from wiping down the counter. Her eyes immediately focused on Emma, taking in the child's disheveled appearance and the way she was swimming in Jake's jacket. "Well, hello there, Han," Molly said warmly, her motherly instincts clearly activated. "Come on in where it's warm." Jake guided Emma to a booth right by the large front window where they could see the entire street. Emma climbed onto the red vinyl seat and immediately pressed her face to the glass, scanning for any sign of her mother. "Can I get you folks something to drink?" Molly asked, approaching their table. Her eyes were full of concern as she looked at Emma, but she didn't ask any uncomfortable questions. "Hot chocolate," Emma whispered, still staring out the window. "Mama says hot chocolate makes everything better." "Coming right up, sweetheart," Molly said with a gentle smile. "How about you, sir?" "Coffee, please," Jake replied. "And, Molly, could we also get some of whatever soup you have today, and maybe a sandwich? The little lady here is pretty hungry." Molly nodded understanding. "I've got fresh chicken noodle soup and grilled cheese sandwiches." "That sound good, honey." Emma turned from the window long enough to nod eagerly. "Yes, please, ma'am." "Thank you." While they waited for the food, Emma kept watch at the window while Jake tried to think about what to do next. He knew he needed to contact the authorities, but Emma's fear of police complicated things. He also worried about what had happened to her mother. Had there been an accident? Was she in trouble? Or had she simply abandoned her daughter? "Tell me about your mama," Jake said gently. "What's she like?" Emma's face lit up for the first time since he'd met her. "She's the best mama in the whole world. She's really pretty with long brown hair like mine, but she keeps it in a braid most of the time. She works really hard to take care of us." Emma's expression became more serious. "Sometimes she cries when she thinks I'm sleeping, but she always smiles when I'm awake." Jake could hear the love in Emma's voice, which made him feel slightly better about the situation. This wasn't a case of neglect born from lack of caring, but rather a family in crisis. "What kind of work does your mama do?" he asked. "She cleans offices at night sometimes, and she helps at the farm stands when they need extra people. She could do lots of different jobs." Emma's voice filled with pride. "She's really smart, too. She knows how to fix almost anything." Molly returned with the hot chocolate and coffee. The hot chocolate came in a large white mug with whipped cream on top and a sprinkle of cinnamon. Emma wrapped her small hands around the warm mug and took a careful sip, closing her eyes with pleasure as the warm liquid warmed her from the inside. "This is the best hot chocolate ever," she told Molly seriously. "Well, thank you, hon. That's my special recipe," Molly replied with obvious affection for the child. As Emma continued to drink her hot chocolate and watch out the window, Jake caught Molly's eye and nodded toward the counter. Molly understood and followed him over. "The little girl's mother has been missing since this morning," Jake explained quietly. "I found her waiting outside in the cold. She's afraid to call police because her mother told her not to. I think they've been homeless, living in their car." Molly's expression grew grave with concern. "Poor little thing. Do you think something happened to the mother?" "I don't know. Emma said her mother went to talk to someone about housing. Could have been social services, could have been a landlord, could have been anything. What are you planning to do?" Molly asked. Jake glanced back at Emma, who was still diligently watching the street. "I can't just leave her. But I also don't want to traumatize her more by calling police if there's another way to handle this." Molly thought for a moment. "Sheriff Davidson is a good man. He's got grandkids of his own. If you want, I could call him and explain the situation. He might be able to help without scaring the child." Before Jake could respond, Emma called out excitedly from the booth. "Is that her? Is that Mama?" Jake and Molly both hurried back to the window. A woman was walking quickly down the street, but as she passed under a streetlight, it became clear she was too tall and had blonde hair. Emma's face fell with disappointment. "That's not her," she said quietly, settling back in her seat. The soup and sandwich arrived, and Emma ate with the appetite of someone who hadn't had a proper meal in quite some time. She was careful with her manners, saying please and thank you, but Jake noticed she ate every single bite and even used her bread to soak up the last drops of soup. "That was really good," Emma said when she finished. "Mama would have liked it too. She loves soup." Jake was about to ask another question when Emma suddenly went very still, staring out the window with wide eyes. "What is it, Emma?" Jake asked, following her gaze. "There's Mama's car," she whispered, pointing across the street. Jake looked and saw an old sedan parked in front of the grocery store. It was clearly well used, with rust spots and a dent in the rear bumper. Even from this distance, he could see belongings piled in the back seat. "But where is Mama?" Emma asked, her voice beginning to shake again. They watched the car for several minutes, but no one came to it. Emma's anxiety was clearly growing as each minute passed without her mother appearing. "Maybe she's in the store," Jake suggested. "The store is closed," Emma said, pointing to the dark windows. "And Mama doesn't have money to buy food there anyway. We get food from the place that gives it away for free." Jake realized she was talking about a food bank. This family situation was even more desperate than he had initially thought. "Emma, I think we need to get some help to find your Mama," Jake said carefully. "I know you're scared about talking to police, but there's some really good people whose job it is to help kids and families." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "But what if they can't find Mama? What if something really bad happened to her?" Jake moved to sit next to Emma on her side of the booth, making sure she didn't feel trapped. "Hey, look at me," he said softly. Emma turned her tearful brown eyes to meet his gaze. "I promise you, we're going to find your Mama. And until we do, you're not going to be alone, okay? I'm not going anywhere." "But you don't even know me," Emma said, confusion mixing with her fear. "Why would you help me?" Jake thought about how to explain to a 7-year-old girl the simple human instinct to protect someone vulnerable. Sometimes when we see someone who needs help, especially a kid who's scared and alone, we have to help them. It's what good people do. Are you a good person? Emma asked seriously. I try to be, Jake replied honestly. Emma studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to read his character. Finally, she nodded. I think you are. Mama always says I'm good at knowing which people are safe. At that moment, Molly appeared at their table with Sheriff Davidson. He was a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. He was wearing regular clothes instead of a uniform, which Jake appreciated. Hello there, Sheriff Davidson said, sliding into the booth across from Emma. I'm Sheriff Davidson, but everyone just calls me Dave. Molly tells me you're looking for your mama. Emma instinctively moved closer to Jake, but she didn't hide or refuse to talk. Yes, sir. She's been gone all day. Can you tell me your mama's name? Dave asked gently. Sarah Rose Collins, Emma replied. But everyone calls her Sarah. Dave wrote this down in a small notebook. And what does your mama look like? Emma provided a description of her mother, and Dave continued asking gentle questions about where they had been staying and where her mother might have gone. Throughout the conversation, Emma remained pressed against Jake's side, clearly drawing comfort from his presence. Emma, I'm going to make some phone calls to see if I can find out what happened to your mama, Dave said. Sometimes when adults have to go talk to people about important things like housing, the meetings take much longer than expected. She might be stuck somewhere waiting to talk to someone. This possibility seemed to give Emma hope. Really? She might just be waiting in line somewhere. It's possible, Dave said kindly. Let me check on some things. In the meantime, you're safe here with Jake and Molly. Dave stepped outside to make his calls, and Jake could see him through the window talking on his radio and phone. Emma watched anxiously, still pressed against Jake's side. Jake, Emma said quietly, what happens to kids when their mamas disappear? The question broke Jake's heart. Emma, we're going to find your mama. But if for some reason we can't find her right away, there are people whose job it is to take care of kids and make sure they're safe. Like foster homes? Emma asked, her voice very small. Sometimes. Have you heard about foster homes before? Emma nodded. A girl at my old school went to live with a foster family when her daddy went away. She said some of them are nice and some aren't. Jake could see the fear in her eyes at the possibility of being placed with strangers. He wanted to reassure her, but he also didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep. Emma, no matter what happens, I'm going to make sure you're placed with good people who will take care of you. And I'm going to keep looking for your mama until we find her. Promise? Emma asked, looking up at him with those trusting brown eyes. I promise, Jake said, meaning it completely. Sheriff Davidson came back inside, his expression serious but not grim. Emma, I have some news about your mama. Emma sat up straighter, her whole body tense with anticipation. She's okay, Dave said quickly, seeing her panic. She's not hurt, but she's been detained at the county building. What does detain mean? Emma asked. Jake and Dave exchanged a look. It means she's having to stay there while some adults work out some problems, Dave explained carefully. What kind of problems? Emma pressed. Dave clearly struggled with how much to tell a child. Sometimes when people are looking for help with housing and other things, there are lots of forms to fill out and people to talk to. Your mama is safe, but she can't leave yet because they're still working on her case. Jake suspected there was more to the story, but he was grateful Dave was being gentle with Emma. Can I see her? Emma asked hopefully. Not tonight, Dave said, but probably tomorrow. The people there are trying to help your mama figure out the best way to take care of you. Emma's face crumpled. Are they going to take me away from mama? They're going to try to help your family, Dave said. But, Emma, tonight you need somewhere safe and warm to sleep. Jake has offered to stay with you, and I know a really nice lady named Mrs. Patterson who takes care of children sometimes when their parents can't. She has a spare bedroom, and she loves kids. Emma looked panicked and grabbed onto Jake's arm. I want to stay with Jake. Please don't make me go with someone I don't know. Dave looked at Jake questioningly. Jake, are you willing to stay with Emma tonight? Mrs. Patterson could supervise if that would help. Jake didn't hesitate. Absolutely. Whatever Emma needs. Emma looked relieved, but then a new worry crossed her face. But what about Mama? She's going to come back here looking for me. What if she can't find me? Emma, Your mama knows where you are, Dave said gently. I talked to her on the phone a few minutes ago. She's so relieved that you're safe, and that Jake found you. She said to tell you she loves you very much, and that she's sorry she couldn't come back when she said she would. Fresh tears started flowing down Emma's cheeks. Is she coming back tomorrow for sure? We're working on it, Dave said honestly. She wants nothing more than to be with you. As the evening continued, arrangements were made for Emma to stay the night at Mrs. Patterson's house, with Jake remaining as her support person. Emma was exhausted, both emotionally and physically, and she fell asleep in the car on the way there, her small hand still clutching Jake's jacket. Mrs. Patterson was exactly as Sheriff Davidson had described her. A woman in her early 70s with silver hair and warm brown eyes. She welcomed Emma into her home as if she were her own granddaughter. Her house smelled like cinnamon and vanilla, and every room felt cozy and safe. I've got fresh cookies in the oven and a nice warm bedroom all ready for you, sweetheart, Mrs. Patterson told Emma as they entered the house. Emma stayed close to Jake, still wearing his oversized jacket like armor against an uncertain world. Mrs. Patterson seemed to understand the child's need for familiarity and didn't push Emma to separate from Jake. Would you like to call your mama before bedtime? Mrs. Patterson asked. Sheriff Davidson gave me the number where she's staying. Emma's face lit up with hope. Really? I can talk to Mama. Within minutes, Mrs. Patterson had Sarah Collins on the phone. Emma clutched the receiver with both hands, tears streaming down her face as she heard her mother's voice. Mama, I was so scared. I waited and waited, but you didn't come back, Emma said, her words tumbling over each other. Jake could hear Sarah's voice through the phone, thick with emotion. I know, baby girl. I'm so sorry. Mama had to stay here longer than I thought. Are you okay? Are you safe? Yes, Jake found me and took care of me. He gave me his coat and bought me soup, and he promised to help find you, Emma said, looking gratefully at Jake. Can you put Jake on the phone, sweetheart? I want to thank him. Emma handed Jake the phone with both hands. Mama wants to talk to you. Jake took the phone, stepping slightly away to give Emma some privacy with Mrs. Patterson, who was showing her the plate of fresh chocolate chip cookies. This is Jake, he said into the receiver. Jake, I don't even know how to thank you. Sarah's voice was thick with tears. When Sheriff Davidson told me a stranger had found Emma and kept her safe, I can't believe there are still people in this world who would help a child they don't even know. Ma'am, any decent person would have done the same thing, Jake said. Emma's a brave, smart little girl. You've raised her well. I've tried my best, but lately, Sarah's voice broke. We've been living in our car for 2 months. I came to apply for emergency housing assistance, and they said they needed to do background checks and verify information. They've been keeping me here all day, asking questions, filling out forms. I told them about Emma, but they said I couldn't leave until everything was processed. Jake could hear the frustration and desperation in her voice. What's going to happen now? They found us a place in emergency transitional housing. It's not much, but it's a roof over our heads, and Emma can go back to school. But, Jake, they're talking about doing a home study, checking if I'm a fit parent because of our housing situation. They might try to take Emma away from me temporarily. Jake's jaw tightened with anger at the system that could punish a mother for being homeless. Is there anything I can do to help? You've already done more than I could ever ask, Sarah said. But, Jake, could you possibly stay with Emma until I can get back to her? She trusts you, and I'm terrified of her being alone with strangers right now. She's been through so much already. Of course, Jake said without hesitation. I'll stay as long as she needs me to. I don't understand why you're helping us, Sarah said, her voice full of wonder. You don't even know us. Jake thought about his own childhood, moving from foster home to foster home after his mother died when he was 9. He remembered the terror of being alone, the desperate need for just one person to care about what happened to him. Sometimes people just need help, he said simply, and sometimes we're in a position to give it. When Jake handed the phone back to Emma, she talked to her mother for another 10 minutes, getting reassurance that they would see each other soon and that everything was going to work out. That night, Mrs. Patterson showed Emma to a small bedroom decorated with yellow flowers and filled with stuffed animals. There was a comfortable single bed with a handmade quilt and a window that looked out over a garden. "This is beautiful," Emma said, touching the quilt gently. "It's like a real princess room. I'm glad you like it, honey. Now, Jake is going to sleep on the couch in the living room. So, if you need anything at all during the night, you just call for him, okay?" Emma nodded, but when bedtime came, she was clearly anxious about sleeping alone. She stood in the doorway of the bedroom in borrowed pajamas that were too big for her, clutching her one-eared stuffed rabbit. "Jake," she said quietly, "what if I have bad dreams?" "Then you wake me up," Jake said from where he was arranging pillows on the couch. "I'll be right here all night. Promise?" "I promise, Emma. I'm not going anywhere." Despite her exhaustion, Emma had trouble falling asleep. Jake could hear her tossing and turning, and twice she called out to make sure he was still there. Finally, around midnight, she appeared in the living room doorway. "Jake, I can't sleep. I keep thinking about Mama being stuck in that building." Jake sat up on the couch. "Come here, kiddo." Emma padded over and climbed onto the couch next to him. Jake arranged his jacket over both of them like a blanket. "Tell me about the good things that are going to happen tomorrow," Jake said. "When you see your mama again, what's the first thing you're going to do?" Emma snuggled against his side, finally relaxing for the first time all day. "I'm going to hug her for a really long time. And then I'm going to tell her about you and how you took care of me." "What else?" "We're going to see our new house. Mama said it has real beds and a kitchen where she can cook real food instead of just sandwiches." Emma's voice was getting sleepy. "And maybe Mama won't cry anymore when she thinks I'm not looking." Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. "That sounds like a pretty good day." "Jake," Emma said quietly, "after Mama comes back, will you still be our friend?" "If you want me to be, then yes. I'll always be your friend." "Good," Emma said, and within minutes, she was fast asleep against Jake's shoulder. The next morning brought good news. Sheriff Davidson called early to say that Sarah's paperwork had been approved and she would be released that afternoon. The transitional housing was ready, and Emma could be reunited with her mother by dinner time. Emma was so excited she could barely eat the pancakes Mrs. Patterson made for breakfast. She kept asking Jake what time it was and how much longer until Mama would come. "Can we go see our new house?" Emma asked as they finished breakfast. "Sheriff Davidson is going to pick us up in an hour and take us there," Jake said. "We'll get everything ready for when your Mama arrives." The transitional housing was a small apartment complex specifically for families in crisis. The unit assigned to Sarah and Emma was modest but clean, with 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, and a living room. It was furnished with basic necessities and felt like a palace compared to living in a car. Emma ran from room to room, marveling at having real walls and a real bathroom. "Look, Jake, I have my own bedroom with a window and everything." Jake spent the afternoon helping Emma settle into the apartment. They arranged the few belongings from their car, and Mrs. Patterson had sent along some extra clothes and toys for Emma. By the time Sarah arrived, the small apartment felt like home. The reunion between Emma and her mother was everything Jake had hoped it would be. Sarah dropped to her knees as soon as she saw Emma, and they held each other for what seemed like forever, both crying happy tears. "I miss you so much, baby girl," Sarah whispered into Emma's hair. "I miss you too, Mama. But Jake took really good care of me. He kept me safe just like you asked." Sarah looked up at Jake with tears streaming down her face. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "You don't need to repay me," Jake said. "Just take good care of each other." But as the evening went on, Jake could see that Sarah was overwhelmed by everything that had happened. She was grateful for the housing, but the trauma of being detained overnight and nearly losing her daughter had shaken her badly. She kept Emma close to her side and watched Jake warily, as if she couldn't quite believe his motives were pure. "Sarah," Jake said gently as the evening wound down, "I know this has all been scary and confusing. You don't know me, and you have every right to be cautious. But I want you to know that my offer to help stands. If you need anything at all, you can call me." Sarah studied his face carefully. "Why?" she asked bluntly. "Why would you want to help us? What do you get out of it?" Jake thought about how to answer honestly. "When I was 9 years old, my mother died. I spent the rest of my childhood in foster care, moving from place to place. I know what it feels like to be scared and alone and not sure if anyone cares about what happens to you." He looked at Emma, who was listening intently. Emma reminded me that sometimes one person caring can make all the difference. Sarah's expression softened. "I'm sorry about your mother. It was a long time ago, but it taught me that we all need someone to look out for us sometimes." 3 months later, Jake was finishing his workday at the Henderson Ranch when his phone rang. He smiled when he saw Emma's name on the caller ID. "Ijeka." Emma's voice was bright and happy. "Guess what? What's that, kiddo? Mama got a real job. She's going to work at the bank in town, and they said if she does good, she can get promoted and make even more money." "That's fantastic news, Emma. I'm so proud of your mama." "And Jake, Mama said maybe you could come have dinner with us Sunday. She's going to make real fried chicken, and I'm learning how to make biscuits." Jake grinned. "I would love to have dinner with you and your mama." In the background, he could hear Sarah's voice. "Tell Jake he's family now, whether he likes it or not." Jake felt his chest warm with emotion. After years of drifting from ranch to ranch with no real connections, he had found something he hadn't even known he was looking for. "Emma," he said, "tell your mama I said there's nothing I'd like more than to be part of your family." The following Sunday, as Jake sat around a small kitchen table, sharing fried chicken and laughed about biscuits with Sarah and Emma, he reflected on how much their lives had changed since that cold November night. Emma was back in school and thriving. Sarah had not only found stable employment, but had also started taking evening classes toward her accounting degree. They had moved into a larger apartment and were saving money for their own house. But more than that, they had all found something invaluable in each other. Sarah had found someone she could trust to help support her, and Emma had found a father figure who would always be there for her. And Jake had found a family he had never thought he would have. "Jake," Emma said as they finished dinner, "remember that first night when I asked to hide in your coat?" "I remember," Jake said softly. "I wasn't really asking to hide in your coat," Emma said thoughtfully. "I was asking you to keep me safe." "I know," Jake said, reaching over to ruffle her hair. "And I always will." Sarah smiled at them both. "We all will. That's what families do." As Jake drove home that evening, he thought about how one moment of choosing to help a scared child had changed all of their lives. Emma was right that she had been asking him to keep her safe. But what she didn't realize was that in saving her, she had also saved him from a life of loneliness and disconnection. Sometimes the most important question isn't whether we can afford to help someone in need. Sometimes the question is whether we can afford not to. And sometimes when a little girl asks if she can hide in your coat, the answer changes everything.